Clara had always known her place. As the maid of the bustling frontier household, she moved silently from room to room, cleaning, cooking, and tending to the children. The townsfolk rarely noticed her. She was the invisible thread that held the household together. But it was different with little Ayanna. From the moment the girl had come into Tay's care, Clara had treated her as though she were her own. She bathed her, combed her hair, read stories to her, and whispered comforting words when the nights grew too dark for the child to bear. Tay, the Apache warrior and Ayanna's father, had left weeks ago on a mission beyond the hills. The house seemed quieter without his commanding presence, yet Clara worked harder than ever, knowing the weight of responsibility rested on her shoulders. She kept the child close, teaching her songs and games, and assuring her that everything would be fine. Clara never let herself think of the dangers outside, of the ruthless bandits who often prowled the frontier, or the tension simmering between the townsfolk and the native warriors. But danger had a way of finding even the quietest corners. It was a night that Clara would never forget. A windstorm had blown in from the mountains, rattling windows and shaking the shutters. But the storm was the least of her worries. She had heard shouting outside, cries that sent shivers down her spine. Bandits were raiding the town. They were ruthless and fast, and Clara knew they would stop at nothing to pillage and burn. Clara gathered Ayanna into her arms. The child clung to her, her small body trembling against Clara's. "It's okay, sweetheart," Clara whispered, though her own heart pounded in terror. She carried Ayanna through secret passageways, hidden closets, and the shadowed halls of the house, making her way to the basement. It was a cramped, dusty place, but it was safe. Here, Clara could keep Ayanna out of sight until the danger passed. Hours passed like lifetimes. Clara hummed lullabies, whispered stories, and soothed Ayanna through every cry and whimper. She prayed that Tay would return soon, that he would somehow know they were safe. Her hands were raw from gripping the child, her arms aching, but she refused to falter. Clara had never seen herself as brave, never imagined herself capable of such courage, yet in that moment, nothing else mattered except keeping Ayanna alive. When the sun finally crested over the hills, casting light on the ravaged town, Clara heard the unmistakable sound of hooves. Her heart leapt. Could it be him? Could it be Tay? She dashed to the front of the house, peering out through the smoke-streaked windows. And then she saw him, the warrior, his eyes scanning the ruins, his stance tense, his hand resting on the bow at his side. Tay stormed through the door, his gaze sharp, his senses alert, expecting chaos. But what he saw instead stole his breath. There was Clara, pale and exhausted, holding his daughter in her arms. Ayanna's eyes were wide but unhurt, her small hand reaching out for her father. For a long moment neither spoke. Tay's chest heaved, his mind trying to reconcile the sight before him. The maid, whom he had never considered beyond her duties, had kept his daughter safe through the deadliest night of their lives. Gratitude fought with disbelief in his heart. Slowly, he stepped forward, kneeling beside Clara. You kept her safe?" His voice was low, rough with emotion. Clara nodded, her voice trembling. "I promised I would protect her, no matter what. She's safe now, because I stayed with her." Tay's eyes softened as he looked at her. For the first time, he saw beyond her title, beyond her position in the household. He saw courage, devotion, strength, and most importantly, he saw someone who had risked everything to save the one thing he held most dear. That day changed everything. Clara was no longer just the maid. She was the guardian of his daughter, the person he could trust above all others. And as the smoke cleared and the town began to rebuild, a quiet understanding passed between them. In the shadow of danger, respect had been forged, and something neither had expected had begun to bloom. The morning after the raid was eerily quiet. The townsfolk were emerging from hiding, assessing the damage, their faces a mix of fear and disbelief. Smoke still lingered in the air, carrying the acrid scent of charred wood and scorched earth. Clara carried Ayanna to the kitchen, gently setting her down with a soft kiss on the forehead. The child clung to her, still trembling, but the safety of home and of Clara's presence was beginning to soothe her. Tay moved among the ruins, his keen eyes noting every sign of destruction, every overturned cart and every shattered door. But his mind kept drifting back to Clara. How had she managed to protect Ayanna through the night? He replayed the image of her cradling his daughter in his mind, the exhaustion on her face, the steadfast courage in her eyes. The realization weighed on him. She had risked her life without hesitation. For a child who was not her own by blood dot by mid-morning, the household began to regroup. Clara worked quietly, her hands moving deftly as she helped clean debris, prepared a simple meal, and tended to minor injuries. Tay finally approached her, his steps measured, his expression unreadable. "Sit," he commanded softly, gesturing toward a chair. Clara obeyed, sensing the weight behind his words. "You?" "Stayed with her all night," Tay said, his voice rough with emotion, though he tried to keep it steady. "Did you know what danger you were in?" Clara shook her head. "I knew there was danger, yes," she admitted. "But I couldn't leave her. I couldn't let anything happen to her." Her eyes met his, steady despite the fear still lurking beneath the surface. "You left her in my care. I promised I'd protect her." "That's all I did." Tay studied her carefully. There was no boastfulness in her tone, only honesty. Her humility, combined with the courage she had shown, impressed him more than he could admit. Slowly, the warrior's stance softened, his harshness giving way to a rare vulnerability. "You didn't have to do it," he said, almost whispering. "You risked your life." "For her," Clara lowered her eyes. "She's worth it. More than anything." Her words carried an honesty that struck Tay deeply. He felt something stirring inside him. Gratitude, yes, but also a quiet awe. This woman, whom he had barely noticed before, had become the one who safeguarded his most precious treasure. Over the next few days, Clara's role in the household began to shift, though subtly at first. Tay observed her careful attentions, her unwavering patience with Ayanna, her ability to remain calm under pressure. He found himself consulting her when making decisions about the child, seeking her opinion on matters small and large. Clara, once invisible in the household, became indispensable. Ayanna, of course, adored Clara. The bond between them grew stronger each day. The child would run to her for comfort, for stories, for hugs that lasted far longer than anyone expected. Tay watched these moments quietly, feeling a deep respect for Clara that bordered on reverence. She had earned a place in their lives that no title or rank could define. One afternoon, Tay found Clara in the garden, gently coaxing Ayanna to try walking again after the scare of the raid. The child's small hands clung to Clara's, her laughter ringing out in pure joy. Tay approached, and Clara looked up, her face flushed with exertion but bright with satisfaction. "She's learning faster than I expected," Clara said, smiling. Tay nodded, studying her. "I should have noticed sooner," he admitted. "You're more than I ever realized. Brave and careful. Loyal and patient." He hesitated, then added, "You've done what no one else could." Clara felt a warmth in her chest at his words, but she kept her expression modest. "I only did what I had to. She is your daughter, and I care for her," she said softly, for the first time. Tay saw Clara not as the household maid, but as a protector, a partner in the safety and upbringing of his child. The foundation of trust had been laid, and with it, the possibility of something deeper, an emotional bond that neither danger nor circumstance could easily sever Dot as the sun set over the frontier, casting golden light over the ruins of the town. Clara tucked Ayanna into bed, and Tay lingered at the doorway. His gaze met hers, and in that quiet moment, a silent understanding passed between them. What had begun as duty and survival was slowly becoming something far more profound, an unspoken promise of loyalty, respect, and perhaps even love. The days that followed the raid were filled with quiet rebuilding. The town repaired its broken fences, patched the shattered windows, and swept the streets free of debris. But inside the household, a different kind of restoration was taking place. Clara, once invisible, now moved through the rooms with a subtle authority born of necessity. She planned meals, organized repairs, and attended to Ayanna with a focus that left Tay both impressed and uneasy. He had never relied on anyone like this before, and he wasn't used to the quiet strength of someone who did not command a tribe or wield a bow. Clara's courage had been undeniable during the raid, but it was her consistency afterward that struck him. Each day he observed her, how she soothed Ayanna's fears, how she anticipated the household's needs, how she carried herself with dignity even while performing the most menial tasks. One morning, Tay found Clara in the kitchen, arranging the child's breakfast. The early light of dawn streamed through the windows, illuminating her hair like copper in firelight. Clara looked up as he entered, her hands wiping a small smudge of flour from her apron. "Good morning, Tay," she said softly, her voice steady but warm. He nodded, his gaze lingering on her. "Morning," he replied, then paused. "I wanted to thank you again." Clara shook her head, a small smile tugging at her lips. "No thanks needed. Ayanna is safe. That's all that matters." Tay stepped closer, his eyes serious. "It matters to me. What you did, what you continue to do. It's not just care for a child, it's loyalty, courage, and I've seen few possess both." Clara felt a flutter in her chest. Words failed her. She simply inclined her head, acknowledging his praise with quiet grace. There was something in Tay's voice, something in the way he looked at her, that made her pulse quicken. She tried to push the feeling aside. She was the maid. He was a warrior, a father, a man of immense presence and authority. Their worlds were not meant to intersect beyond duty, but fate had other plans. Later that day, as Clara played with Ayanna in the garden, Tay emerged from the house, carrying a bundle of freshly chopped firewood. He stopped at the edge of the garden, watching them. Clara noticed him and smiled, waving him over. Hesitation flashed across his face, but he walked forward nonetheless. "You've taught her well," Tay said quietly, leaning against a tree. "She's fearless now, almost like you." Clara laughed softly, brushing a strand of hair from Ayanna's face. "Fearless? Perhaps, but she still knows when to be cautious. I tried to teach her both." There was a pause, heavy with unspoken thoughts. Tay's gaze met hers again, and Clara felt an electric tension that was neither threatening nor casual. It was charged with possibility. He had begun to notice things he had ignored before, the gentleness in her touch, the patience in her words, the quiet confidence that guided every action. Days turned into weeks, and their interactions became more natural, though always tempered by circumstance. They shared stories of the past, their voices low during evenings by the hearth. Clara learned of Tay's life among his people, the battles he had fought, the responsibilities he carried. Tay discovered Clara's resilience, the hardships she had endured, and her unshakable loyalty to those she cared for. One evening, after Ayanna had fallen asleep, Tay lingered in the sitting room. Clara sat near the fire, quietly sewing a torn dress. He watched her for a long moment, then spoke, his voice hesitant. "I didn't expect to feel this way about you." Clara's needle paused in her hand. "Feel what way?" she asked softly, though her heart had already begun to answer. "I don't know yet," he admitted, leaning back, his eyes searching hers. "But I see you, not just as the maid, not just as Ayana's protector. I see you. And it frightens me because it's unexpected." Clara lowered her gaze, the firelight reflecting in her eyes. She understood perfectly. She, too, had felt the shift and unspoken pull toward a man she had respected, admired, and now cared for more deeply than she could admit, for the first time. The barrier between them seemed less like a chasm of class or culture and more like a bridge waiting to be crossed. And as the night deepened, they sat together in quiet understanding, neither needing words to acknowledge the beginnings of something. Neither had planned, but both could not ignore the weeks following the raid had softened some of the tension between Clara and Tay. But the frontier life was never without its trials. Each day brought new responsibilities, each moment a test of courage, patience, and trust. Clara had settled into her role as Ayana's guardian, earning not only the child's affection but also Tay's cautious respect. Yet beneath their daily routines, a quiet tension simmered, an unspoken awareness that something deeper was forming between them. One crisp morning, Clara was tending the garden, her hands deep in the soil, when Tay approached. The child, curious as ever, trailed behind him. "Good morning," Clara said, straightening and brushing dirt from her sleeves. "Morning," Tay replied, his tone carrying an edge of thoughtfulness. He watched Clara for a moment, noting how effortlessly she moved, her quiet command of the garden and her tender attention to Ayana. The warrior felt a strange mixture of admiration and unease. Admiration because she had proven herself brave and capable. Unease because he could no longer dismiss the feelings that had begun to stir in his chest. Ayana ran ahead to gather fresh herbs, her laughter ringing in the morning air. Clara followed her, but Tay's voice stopped her. "Wait," he said, stepping closer. "I wanted to talk." Clara nodded, wary but curious. "About?" "About everything," he admitted, his gaze searching hers. "About last night. About you. About us." Clara's breath caught slightly, but she stood her ground. "I don't understand." Tay ran a hand through his hair, frustration and vulnerability mingling in his expression. "I didn't expect to feel this," he confessed. "I didn't expect to care for someone outside of my family, someone who isn't of my people, someone who isn't me. And yet, here I am. And every day I see you caring for Ayana, for the house, for me, and it's more than respect now. I can't deny it." Clara's heart raced. She had felt the same, though she had tried to bury it under the weight of her position as a maid. "Tay, She paused, uncertain. "I feel the same, but I'm just the maid." You are more than that," he interrupted, his voice firm but gentle. "You've proven that time and again. You are brave, loyal, strong, and my daughter loves you. I can't and won't ignore what you mean to us." For a moment, silence fell, heavy with emotion. Clara's hands trembled slightly, whether from the words or the morning chill, she could not tell. Ayana ran up, holding a small bundle of herbs, breaking the tension. She handed them to Clara with a proud smile. "Look, Clara, I picked these all by myself." Clara knelt, smoothing the child's hair. "You did wonderfully, Ayana," she said, smiling. Tay watched this interaction, feeling the pull of the domestic peace she brought into their lives, the warmth and stability he had longed for amid the chaos of frontier living. As the day passed, Tay found himself lingering near Clara, sharing small tasks, offering subtle guidance, and occasionally exchanging quiet smiles that spoke volumes. It was in these ordinary moments, the mundane routines of daily life, that their bond deepened. Clara saw the softness behind Tay's warrior exterior. He saw the strength and dignity behind her humble demeanor. That evening, As the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of amber and rose, Clara and Tay sat together on the porch. Ayanna had fallen asleep, and the world felt peaceful for the first time in weeks. Tay reached for Clara's hand, his fingers brushing hers lightly. "I don't know what tomorrow brings," he said quietly, "but I know I want you with me. Not just for Ayanna, but for me. If you'll have me, that is." Clara's chest tightened. She had feared this moment, and yet it felt inevitable, natural. Slowly, she placed her hand over his, feeling the steady warmth and unspoken promise in his touch. "I'll stay," she whispered, "if you'll have me." Tay's lips curved into a small, almost shy smile, the first Clara had ever seen from the formidable warrior. "Then it's settled," he said, his voice low, determined, and tender all at once. The fire of their connection had been kindled through danger, trust, and shared responsibility. Now, amid the quiet of the frontier evening, it began to glow with something far more personal, a bond forged not just by circumstance, but by choice. Together, they would face the uncertainties of tomorrow, strengthened by respect, love, and the unbreakable trust that had grown between them. Life in the household began to settle into a delicate rhythm. Clara's presence, once unnoticed, was now integral to both Ayanna and Tay. But with her rising importance came the subtle scrutiny of the townsfolk. Whispers followed her through the market, curious glances lingered longer than polite, and rumors began to weave themselves around her name. She was just the maid, after all, and the Apache warrior's respect and growing affection was raising eyebrows among those who clung to social hierarchies and old prejudices. Clara tried to ignore the stares, focusing instead on Ayanna's lessons, the house chores, and the small garden where they grew herbs and vegetables. She found solace in routine, in the quiet companionship of Tay, who had begun to treat her as more than a servant, sometimes with a gentle teasing, sometimes with serious conversation late into the night. One afternoon, Tay returned early from patrolling the outskirts of the town. Clara was in the kitchen preparing a simple meal, and Ayanna was playing nearby with a wooden doll. Tay leaned against the doorway, observing them quietly. His presence startled neither Clara nor Ayanna. Their familiarity with him was comfortable now. "You've been teaching her too many tricks," Tay said, a teasing note in his voice. "I'm afraid she'd be cleverer than I am before long." Clara smiled, wiping her hands on her apron. "She's learning from the right teacher," she said softly, glancing at Ayanna. The child looked up, giggling, and ran to Tay with open arms. Tay caught her, spinning her gently in the air. Clara watched, a warmth spreading through her chest. This was what she had protected, what she had risked her life for: the laughter, the small joys, the trust of a child. And she was finally seeing Tay in a new light, not just as a warrior, but as a father, a man capable of love and tenderness. As the weeks passed, Tay and Clara spent more time together. They shared quiet conversations in the evenings, moments of laughter while tending the garden, and sometimes long walks along the riverbank. The physical closeness, subtle gestures, a hand brushing against another, a shoulder offered for support, began to speak louder than words. But their growing closeness was not without challenges. One morning, as Clara delivered fresh bread to the table, she noticed a group of townspeople whispering and casting pointed glances her way. Tay followed her gaze and narrowed his eyes. "Do not let their opinions trouble you," he said, his voice low but firm. "What matters is what we know to be true. You are no longer just the maid. You are part of this family, my daughter's family, and mine." Clara felt a mix of relief and pride. His words strengthened her resolve. She had fought for Ayanna's safety, earned Tay's respect, and now she would not let the judgment of others sway her. That evening, after Ayanna had gone to bed, Tay found Clara on the porch, staring at the stars. The night was still, and the faint sound of the river carried across the property. Tay sat beside her, their shoulders almost touching. "Clara," he said softly, "do you ever wonder what would have happened if the raid hadn't? If I hadn't returned when I did?" Clara glanced at him, curiosity and emotion in her eyes. "I think we would have found a way to survive, somehow, but I'm glad you came back. I'm glad you trusted me with her." Tay turned toward her, his gaze intense yet gentle. "You did more than survive, Clara. You saved her. And in doing so, you saved a part of me I didn't even know I could lose. I care for you. More than I should, perhaps, but I cannot deny it." Clara felt her breath catch. Her hands found his, fingers intertwining naturally. "I care for you too, Tay," she admitted softly, her voice steady despite the quickening of her heart. "I have for some time." A small smile curved his lips, the tension in his shoulders easing. "Then perhaps we can face whatever comes next. Together, under the stars, with the soft night breeze around them." Clara and Tay shared a quiet, tender moment, a promise of partnership, respect, and a love that had grown from courage and trust. In the world beyond their porch, whispers might continue, challenges might arise. But here, in this moment, they had each other, and that was enough. Spring had begun to touch the frontier town, painting the fields with tender green shoots and filling the air with the scent of wildflowers. For Clara, life had grown into a rhythm of purpose and quiet joy. She cared for Ayanna, tended the household, and spent time with Tay, whose presence had become a comforting constant. Yet the frontier was never truly safe, and peace was often fragile. One late afternoon, as Clara worked in the garden, a messenger arrived, riding fast and urgent. His horse snorted and stamped, and his eyes darted nervously around the yard. "Tay," he called, dismounting quickly. "Trouble on the northern trail. Raiders more dangerous than before are threatening travelers. Some have already been taken." Tay's expression hardened immediately. His warrior instinct surged, his protective nature focused on action. "Which travelers?" he demanded. "Merchants from the town," the messenger replied, breathless. "They were ambushed near the river crossing. If reinforcements don't arrive soon, some won't make it." Clara felt a flicker of fear, but also determination. She had faced danger before, and she knew she could not hide while others were at risk. Nor could she leave Ayanna unprotected. Tay noticed her glance and took her hand briefly, grounding her. "Stay here with Ayanna," he said. Clara shook her head, her grip firm. "I can help. I know the land around the river. I can guide or protect if needed." Tay studied her, torn between wanting to protect her and recognizing her capability. "Very well," he said finally. "But we move together. We do this carefully. For Ayanna's sake and each other." By nightfall, the pair set out. Clara carried a small pack with essentials, her mind focused and alert. The moonlight reflected off the river, casting a silver glow over the terrain. Tay moved beside her, silent and watchful, his eyes scanning the shadows. Clara felt a thrill of fear mixed with excitement, the adrenaline of danger, tempered by the trust between them. They soon found the raiders' camp, scattered near a bend in the river. Tay signaled Clara to stay hidden at first, observing the layout and the number of men. But one scream from the captured merchants spurred Clara into action. Without hesitation, she slipped into the shadows, moving quietly, using the terrain and trees to her advantage. She whispered instructions to Tay, guiding him to the blind spots she had identified, and together they launched a surprise counterattack. Clara fought with courage and precision. Her earlier experiences protecting Ayanna had honed her instincts. She was quick, resourceful, and fearless. She ducked behind rocks, pulled a struggling raider off balance, and created openings for Tay to strike decisively. Within moments, The raiders were subdued or fleeing into the night. The merchants were freed, shaken but unharmed. After ensuring everyone's safety, Tay looked at Clara, his chest heaving from exertion and adrenaline. "You were incredible," he said, awe and admiration mingling in his voice. His eyes softened as he stepped closer. "I didn't doubt your courage before, but tonight, you proved it again. Not just for Ayanna, not just for me, but for everyone who needed help. You're fearless, Clara." Clara's cheeks flushed, both from exertion and the weight of his praise. "I only did what needed to be done," she replied softly. "I couldn't let anyone else be hurt, not when I could help." Tay reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "I see now what I should have realized long ago," he said quietly. "You are more than anyone could imagine. More than a maid. You are brave, strong, and essential to my life, to Ayanna's life, to mine." Clara felt the warmth of his hand linger on her cheek, and in that moment, any remaining barriers between them seemed to fall away. Trust, respect, and shared danger had forged a bond stronger than words. She realized that love had grown quietly, nurtured through adversity, patience, and courage. Together, they guided the merchants back to town, side by side, their hands brushing occasionally, their eyes meeting with an unspoken understanding. That night, when they returned to the household, Ayanna ran to them, unaware of the danger they had just faced. Her laughter filling the air as Clara tucked the child into bed. Tay stood nearby, his gaze fixed on her. "You are extraordinary," he said, his voice low but steady. "And I am grateful, more than I can say." Clara looked up at him, meeting his eyes. "We're stronger together," she whispered. "I know we can face whatever comes next." And as the night settled over the frontier town, Clara and Tay stood together in quiet solidarity, ready to face any challenge with courage, trust, and the beginnings of a love that had proven its strength in fire and shadow. The air had grown warmer, carrying the scent of wildflowers and fresh grass across the frontier town. Clara and Tay had found a fragile rhythm with Ayanna, balancing daily life with the lingering challenges of social scrutiny and tribal expectations. Their bond, tested by danger, judgment, and shared responsibility, had grown unbreakable, but there remained a quiet tension between them. The unspoken feelings neither fully acknowledged aloud. One evening, the household had settled into its nightly routine. Ayanna was tucked into bed, clutching her favorite doll, and Clara had lingered in the sitting room, straightening blankets and tidying the space. The firelight flickered across the room, casting warm shadows. When Tay entered, "You've been working too hard," he said softly, his voice carrying a rare gentleness. Clara looked up, startled, and met his gaze. The intensity in his eyes made her pulse quicken. "I just wanted to make sure Ayanna is comfortable," she replied, brushing imaginary dust from her sleeves. Tay stepped closer, lowering his voice. "And you've done more than that. You've protected her, nurtured her, and kept this household together. You've changed everything for us." Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks. She had grown accustomed to Tay's presence, his quiet admiration, and his respect, but this closeness, this intimacy, unsettled her in the most delightful way. She lowered her eyes, unsure of how to respond. Tay's hand brushed against hers as he reached for a log by the fire. The contact was brief but deliberate, and Clara felt an electric charge in the simple touch. He took a step closer, lowering himself to sit beside her. The warmth of the fire mirrored the warmth in her chest. "Clara," he began, his voice low and steady, "I've watched you through every danger, every challenge, every quiet moment with Ayanna. I've seen your courage, your kindness, your strength, and I realize now that my respect has grown into something more. Something I cannot ignore." Clara's breath caught. She had long feared the vulnerability of admitting her own feelings, but Tay's words made it impossible to deny them. "I feel the same," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the crackle of the fire. I care for you, deeply, and I have for some time." Tay reached for her hand again, this time holding it firmly, intertwining their fingers. The gesture was gentle yet filled with certainty, an acknowledgment of trust, respect, and affection. "Then let us not hide it any longer," he said. "Whatever judgment or obstacles come, we face them together. As partners, as family, as something more." Clara's heart swelled. She leaned closer, their faces only inches apart, and met his gaze. In his eyes she saw admiration, tenderness, and a fierce loyalty that mirrored her own feelings. She allowed herself to be vulnerable, letting her emotions flow freely for the first time. Slowly, Tay leaned forward, brushing his lips gently against hers. The kiss was soft, tentative, yet filled with unspoken promises. Clara responded, her hand resting against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. In that moment, the barriers of class, culture, and circumstance melted away, leaving only the raw truth of their connection. Pulling back slightly, Tay rested his forehead against hers. "You are extraordinary, Clara," he whispered. "More than I ever imagined possible." "And you," Clara replied softly, "are more than I expected. Brave, kind, and capable of seeing me, truly seeing me." They sat together in silence, hands intertwined, hearts aligned. Outside, the night stretched across the frontier, calm and serene. Inside, a new chapter of their lives had begun, not defined by duty or circumstance, but by love, trust, and the courage to embrace what they felt for one another. For the first time, Clara felt fully seen, fully accepted, and fully loved. Tay felt the same. And as the fire burned low, they allowed themselves to simply be together, knowing that whatever challenges awaited them, they would face them side by side with unwavering loyalty, shared courage, and hearts bound by a love forged in adversity. The frontier town had slowly begun to breathe again. Life returned to its familiar rhythm, the aftermath of the raiders' attacks leaving only scars and lessons. But within the household, there was a newfound peace, one that Clara, Tay, and Ayana felt deeply. The bond forged through danger, trust, and courage had grown unshakable, and now it was time for recognition, not just privately, but within the eyes of those around them. Morning sunlight poured through the windows as Clara tended the garden with Ayana by her side. The child giggled, chasing butterflies, and Clara laughed, her heart light for the first time in months. Tay emerged from the house, carrying a small bundle of letters. His eyes, always keen and observant, softened as they fell on Clara. "Morning," he said gently. "I have good news." Clara wiped her hands and looked at him curiously. "What is it?" "These," he said, handing her the letters, "are from the elders of my tribe and some townsfolk. They've seen your courage, your loyalty, and your care for Ayana. They've recognized your place in our lives not as a maid, but as a protector, a partner, and family." Clara's hands trembled as she read through the letters, each one filled with praise, respect, and acknowledgement. The words, once impossible to imagine, now felt tangible. They saw her bravery, her devotion, and the love she had poured into their lives. Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back, overcome with gratitude. Tay stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "You have proven yourself in ways words cannot capture," he said softly. "And now, everyone knows what I have always known. You are extraordinary. Clara, you are our family." Clara smiled, warmth flooding her chest. "And you," she whispered, "have given me a place I never thought I'd have. Not just with Ayana, but with you. I am grateful beyond words." Tay leaned down, brushing a tender kiss across her forehead. "We face life together, Clara. Whatever comes next, we will do it as a family. And he paused, searching her eyes. "I love you." Truly, deeply. Clara's heart leapt, and she felt the weight of unspoken fears and uncertainties lift. "I love you too, Tay," she said, her voice strong and certain. "I have from the start." Later that day, the town gathered to celebrate the successful defense against the raiders. Tay stood with Clara and Ayanna by his side, the trio now united in both action and heart. Townsfolk approached, offering congratulations and respect. Some hesitated at first, but seeing the unshakable bond between Clara and Tay, their skepticism softened. They realized that love, courage, and loyalty transcended status and expectation. Ayanna ran ahead, her laughter ringing out as she played with other children. Tay watched her, his heart swelling with pride. Before turning to Clara, "Look at what we've built," he said, his voice filled with quiet joy. "Not just a safe home, but a family, a community, and a life we can be proud of." Clara squeezed his hand, feeling the steady strength in his grip. "Yes," she replied, "and this is only the beginning. Whatever challenges come, we face them together. Always." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in warm shades of amber and rose, Clara and Tay stood hand in hand, watching Ayanna play. The fire of their love, tempered by trials and strengthened by shared courage, glowed brighter than ever in the quiet of that frontier evening. With the town safe, the child laughing, and hearts aligned, they knew that the journey ahead would not always be easy, but together there was nothing they could not face. The maid who had risked everything had become a guardian, a partner, and the heart of a family bound by trust, respect, and love. And as the stars began to sparkle overhead, Clara rested her head against Tay's shoulder, smiling. The past's hardships had forged a future filled with hope, courage, and the unshakable certainty of their love. The frontier could be harsh, but within their small household, they had found peace, safety, and a home for their hearts. The morning after the raid's aftermath brought an uneasy calm. The town had returned to its usual rhythm, but the echoes of Clara and Tay's daring intervention lingered. Some townsfolk whispered admiration, while others muttered disapproval. A maid daring to stand beside an Apache warrior and openly gain his trust was unheard of. Clara noticed the stares, the hushed comments as she moved through the marketplace, and for the first time, she felt the weight of the invisible barrier separating her from full acceptance. Tay, ever perceptive, noticed her discomfort. As they returned home from delivering supplies to the merchants they had rescued, he gently took her hand. "Do not let their opinions trouble you," he said. "What we know to be true matters far more than what they think. You are part of my family, Clara, my daughter's family, and mine." "That will not change." Clara squeezed his hand, comforted yet still uneasy. "I know," she whispered, "but I cannot pretend their judgment doesn't sting. Their bond, though stronger than ever, would soon face tests beyond social whispers." Tay received word from his tribe. Elders and kin were concerned about his attachment to Clara, a woman outside their people, and the influence she might have on Ayanna. The message was polite but firm. They expected him to reconsider the closeness developing between them. Tay met Clara in the garden that evening, the sun dipping low, casting a golden glow over the flowers she had nurtured. "They've sent word," he said quietly, the tension in his voice unusual. "My people, they question your place with us. They mean no harm, but they worry about Ayanna and me. And now I worry too about how to reconcile my duty to my tribe and what I feel for you." Clara's heart sank slightly, but she held her ground. "Tay, I respect your people. I would never wish to replace or disrespect them, but I cannot deny what has grown between us. We have earned our trust with courage and care. I am not here to cause division." Tay studied her, the conflict visible on his face. "I know," he said slowly, "and that is why I trust you. You have proven yourself with actions, not words. You have risked everything for Ayanna and me. That is stronger than any doubts they might hold." The next days were a delicate balance. Clara continued her care for Ayanna, her interactions with the townsfolk and Tay's tribe measured yet sincere. She demonstrated patience, humility, and courage, slowly winning respect from those who had doubted her. Tay, proud yet cautious, remained by her side, supporting her and gently advocating for her with the elders. One afternoon, a tribal elder visited the household. Clara had prepared a small meal, setting the table with care. The elder observed quietly, noting the warmth, the trust, and the evident bond between Clara, Ayanna, and Tay. Finally, he spoke, his voice deep and measured. "You are brave, and your loyalty is clear. You care for this child as if she were your own. That is not lost on us." Clara bowed her head respectfully. "I only wish to do right by Ayanna and by Tay, nothing more." The elder's stern expression softened. "Actions speak louder than titles. You have proven yourself. Continue in this way, and you will earn your place in our eyes as you have in Tay's heart." That evening, Tay found Clara tending the garden, her hands in the soil, yet her posture weary from the emotional strain of the day. He approached quietly, taking her hands in his. "See," he said softly, "they understand now. Not everyone, but those whose opinions matter most, they see your worth. And I," he paused, searching for the right words, "I have never doubted it." Clara's chest swelled with relief and affection. "Thank you, Tay," she said softly, her voice trembling with emotion, "for trusting me, for standing with me, for believing that courage and love are stronger than fear and judgment." Tay drew her close, resting his forehead against hers. "Together, we can face anything," he whispered. "Whatever challenges come from outside, we will protect each other and Ayanna. Nothing will break this bond." In that moment, beneath the fading light of the frontier evening, Clara and Tay felt the weight of judgment and expectation lift, replaced by a quiet confidence in their shared courage, love, and unwavering trust. They had faced danger, societal skepticism, and tribal caution and emerged stronger, their bond deeper, their hearts united in a promise that no obstacle could easily undo. The air had grown warmer, carrying the scent of wildflowers and fresh grass across the frontier town. Clara and Tay had found a fragile rhythm with Ayanna, balancing daily life with the lingering challenges of social scrutiny and tribal expectations. Their bond, tested by danger, judgment, and shared responsibility, had grown unbreakable, but there remained a quiet tension between them. The unspoken feelings neither fully acknowledged aloud. One evening, the household had settled into its nightly routine. Ayanna was tucked into bed, clutching her favorite doll, and Clara had lingered in the sitting room, straightening blankets and tidying the space. The firelight flickered across the room, casting warm shadows. When Tay entered, "You've been working too hard," he said softly, his voice carrying a rare gentleness. Clara looked up, startled, and met his gaze. The intensity in his eyes made her pulse quicken. "I just wanted to make sure Ayanna is comfortable," she replied, brushing imaginary dust from her sleeves. Tay stepped closer, lowering his voice. "And you've done more than that. You've protected her, nurtured her, and kept this household together. You've changed everything for us." Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks. She had grown accustomed to Tay's presence, his quiet admiration, and his respect, but this closeness, this intimacy, unsettled her in the most delightful way. She lowered her eyes, unsure of how to respond. Tay's hand brushed against hers as he reached for a log by the fire. The contact was brief but deliberate, and Clara felt an electric charge in the simple touch. He took a step closer, lowering himself to sit beside her. The warmth of the fire mirrored the warmth in her chest. "Clara," he began, his voice low and steady, "I've watched you through every danger, every challenge, every quiet moment with Ayanna. I've seen your courage, your kindness, your strength, and I realize now that my respect has grown into something more. Something I cannot ignore." Clara's breath caught. She had long feared the vulnerability of admitting her own feelings, but Tay's words made it impossible to deny them. "I feel the same," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the crackle of the fire. I care for you, deeply, and I have, for some time." Tay reached for her hand again, this time holding it firmly, intertwining their fingers. The gesture was gentle yet filled with certainty, an acknowledgement of trust, respect, and affection. "Then let us not hide it any longer," he said. "Whatever judgment or obstacles come, we face them together. As partners. As family. As something more." Clara's heart swelled. She leaned closer, their faces only inches apart, and met his gaze. In his eyes she saw admiration, tenderness, and a fierce loyalty that mirrored her own feelings. She allowed herself to be vulnerable, letting her emotions flow freely for the first time. Slowly, Tay leaned forward, brushing his lips gently against hers. The kiss was soft, tentative, yet filled with unspoken promises. Clara responded, her hand resting against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. In that moment, the barriers of class, culture, and circumstance melted away, leaving only the raw truth of their connection. Pulling back slightly, Tay rested his forehead against hers. "You are extraordinary, Clara," he whispered. "More than I ever imagined possible." "And you," Clara replied softly, "are more than I expected. Brave, kind, and capable of seeing me, truly seeing me." They sat together in silence, hands intertwined, hearts aligned. Outside, the night stretched across the frontier, calm and serene. Inside, a new chapter of their lives had begun, not defined by duty or circumstance, but by love, trust, and the courage to embrace what they felt for one another. For the first time, Clara felt fully seen, fully accepted, and fully loved. Tay felt the same. And as the fire burned low, they allowed themselves to simply be together, knowing that whatever challenges awaited them, they would face them side by side with unwavering loyalty, shared courage, and hearts bound by a love forged in adversity.